Python lists. In this video, we will investigate how lists can help us with various mathematical operations. And this particular video will be extremely useful in upcoming lessons where we combine mathematics and computer programming. So the first idea that we discuss here is the idea of the list itself. Here are three lists, and they are defined with square brackets. When you define a list with square brackets, you may change the elements of the list. There is another structure in Python very similar to the list. It's called the tuple, and it uses round brackets, and with tuples you cannot change the elements of the tuple. They always stay the same. So for our purposes, lists are often very useful because we compile or collect numbers and we need to change the items in the list frequently. And so we use the list structure. So here we have three different data types defined in lists. Here's a list of integers. We also have a list of floating point numbers. And the third one here is a list of strings or text variables. The lists do not have to hold just the same type of data structure. You have many possibilities with lists. For examples, I can have numbers combined with floating point numbers, combined with text, combined with even another list. I can also add a tuple in there, and a number of things. So this one may not be as useful for us at the moment, but this example is just to illustrate that lists are very flexible. So I'm just going to erase this one as we will not be using it in our further discussion. So the first item that we may like to see here, you've seen some output from some previous use of the program on the side, the output terminal. We're going to access the various items in the lists here. And here's the important part, that lists are very powerful. They collect many data points under one name, and to access them, each data point in the list has a particular index number. The first one is always 0. So when I print L1 at 0, I'm going to get the first item in list 1. So in order to just highlight that, we will comment out all the rest of the print statements and focus on list 1 at 0. And there we have it. List 1 at 0 yields 1, the first item in the list. If I print list 1 at 1, it should give me the second item. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 items and their numbers start at 0, so they end at 4. And there is the second item in the list, list 1 at 1. So there are ways to print out multiple items in the list. So this one is an interesting one, 1 to 3. You would think that would print out 3 items, the first, or actually the second, third, and fourth, because their indexes might be 1, 2, 3. But a particular feature of Python is that the last item in any list is just not printed or accessed. So in this case, we are talking about the items with index numbers 1 and 2, not 3. So it's going to give me a 6 and a 5. Oh, sorry, I've gone to list 2. So it's these two numbers, 2.4, 7.6. These two numbers have index 1 and index 2. So just to illustrate with the previous list, it should be 6 and 5. There we are. So using this colon pattern, I can print multiple items in the list. And here are some variations on the colon pattern. We will look at list 3 from item 2 onwards, and list 1 starting at the beginning and up to, but not including index 3. So you can compare these two to the output that is generated. So exponential, logarithmic. So starting at item 2, 0, 1, 2, and going all the way to the end, exponential, logarithmic. And the 165, where does that come from? It starts from the beginning and goes up to, but not including index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2 is included in that set, and so we get 165 is the output in a list. So there's another notation for working from the back of a list, from the end of a list. So the last item in the list, we just index it as -1. The second last item, -2. And the third last item is -3. So here are 3 more print statements involving the end of the list, and let's see how they output. So the last item in list 2 is 6.3672. The second last item in list 3 is exponential. And starting from the third last item onward with list 1, we get 585. There we have a very powerful set of ways to interact with lists in Python. So there are many things that we can do to manipulate lists, and this makes it very useful for mathematics. Let's see what we can do with lists in terms of joining them together. We can multiply them in a way as well. Not only join them, there's a way to multiply lists. So for the first example here, I have list 4 I defined here, and I'm going to print out list 1 plus list 4. So I add them together, I just add the items of list 4 onto the items of list 1. And there's a syntax error here. Where did that go? Oh yes, we did not add some comments. We uncommented the entire program, and there was a stray set of quotes at the end of the program. Here we go. So list 1, we recall from the first examples, is there, and it's added right on to list 4. So there we have one combined list. I could also just say list 5 is equal to list 1 plus list 4, and then print list 5. The same result will happen. So not only can we do that, we can multiply lists and add those results together to build up quite lengthy lists and repeated sections in lists. So there is 3 sets of numbers from list 1 combined with list 4 twice. And we can do the same with list 3. We'll just print twice, and that's the elements of list 3 listed twice. Very powerful features available for you to build up different lists. So here we are iterating through list items. This is a very useful sort of exercise. When we need to process items in a list, we can iterate through them. So here are 3 examples. In the first one, we iterate each item in list 3. And we just print it. So for everything that we find in list 3, we call it item. And for each of these items, we print it. So let's just see that working. And there's a slight indentation error right about here. There we go. So there are all the items in list 3 and printed out. You'll note that from before, if I just print L3, it prints them as a list. But if I print each item in L3, it prints the individual items and there are no brackets or quotes to go with them. Let us continue. The next set here is printing each item in list 1. And we start here with this command, len, gives us the length of list 1, and we use the length to iterate through each item in list 1. And if we remember, say there are 5 items in list 1, we start at 0, we do not end at 5, we end at 4, which is the last index number of list 1. So this is going to print all the items in list 1, one by one, and there they are, all printed out. Final example, we'll iterate through list 1, but it will do so backwards. So we will, first of all, just print these index numbers using the special for loop structure and the step backwards. We start at length of list 1, that's 5, but the last item is actually 4. So we subtract 1, we start at 4, we go to -1, stepping backwards. But remember, the last one is not included, so we'll end at 0. And we'll see 43210 is printed out here. And now instead, I can print the list items backwards. And here are the list items going backwards, 5, 8, 5, 6, 1. So we will continue now with a look at some list methods. So now our next topic here is list methods. There are various operations built into Python that allow you to work with lists very effectively. The first one here will sum the items in the list. This, of course, only works for a list that contains only numbers. So this will work on list 1 or list 2, but will not necessarily work on list 3. In fact, we can try and see what will happen if we try it on list 3. So first of all, the sum of list 1 is 25. The sum of list 2 is some floating point number here. Wow, too many decimal places. But the sum of list 3 will perhaps yield an error. I'm not sure. Oh, it doesn't like us. No, it's not allowing us to just merely add text. So you need to be careful when using the sum methods to only use it on numerical lists. So now we can print our list 1 and then use the append method. The append method will add an item to the end of the list. So before and after we print, and we see that we have added or appended a 7 onto our list. Not only that, we can insert an item to our list. Into index 2, we insert the item 20, and then we will print our list and see what happened. So we append a 7 on the end, and we insert a 20 in index 2. The rest of the items shift backwards. Very useful for working with our lists. Now we can print the index of item 8. So item 8 appears here in the list. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So its index is 4. So here's a 4. 8 appears in index 4. And how about 5? There are 2 5s in the list. It will print the index of the first occurrence of 5 in the list, and that's at index 3. So now, what about if we pop out the item at index 3? This will pop out the item at index 3. So removes. It removes the item at index 3. Then we should see one of the 5s is now missing from the list as it's been popped out. So list1.reverse, it will reverse all the items in the list. It actually sorts it in reverse and from the, actually it just reverses the list in place. That's actually not a sort. It just reverses all the items in the list. And then finally, the sort. If you reverse after sorting, then it will sort them in reverse. In this case, sorting them goes from the smallest item to the largest item in the list. And there we are, sorting from 1 all the way up to 20. Again, very useful methods for you to use in manipulating and calculating with Python lists. So it may be worth a note here, just to review all of these little commands. Append, it will add an item to the end of the list. So it's not really adding as much as appending. So instead of putting add, that's a common term. And so as to avoid confusion, let's say append. So appending an item to the end of the list. This inserts 20 at index 2. So the 20 ends up at the location in the list, which has an index of 2. So index. This one will print the index number of an item in the list. So as long as there's an 8 in the list, it will give us the index number. You may get an error if there is no 8. You can try that on your own and see what happens. This one reverses. It reverses all the items in the list, and this sorts. So left up to you. You may try sorting various lists that are text and numerical and see if it will sort a list of multiple items that are text, numerical, floating point, and Boolean. You can also try reversing a list, sorting in reverse, and just play around with these and you'll become familiar with them and confident with using them. And you will soon see in future videos how these operations will make mathematics very much easier in certain cases. So let us now look at the final topic, and this is the empty list. So L5 here is an empty list. It has no items in it, but we can populate it with some items. In here, I have used a mathematical function 2 times I minus 5 to append onto the list one by one a geometric sequence. And we can print the final result of 5 here, and we'll see a geometric sequence of, an arithmetic sequence of numbers that skips up by 2 each time, because we go 2 times I, and we start with -5, and we move upwards. And you can actually see the list building up step by step in this iteration loop by printing it inside the loop here, and you will see the progress the computer makes in appending each item onto the list. This is very instructive if you would like to understand how loops and iteration works and how computers work step by step to do their tasks. So this has been an introduction to lists, and all of the techniques that you see here will come in very handy in doing mathematical calculations. In our next video, we will look at how classes and object-oriented programming can help us with the various calculations in mathematics. For many of these ideas, W3 Schools is a great place to get more detailed information on Python. It's a great website with not only Python, but some other languages, all presented in a step-by-step and easy to understand sort of format for new programmers. So to get more details on what we are talking about in these videos, w3schools.com would be a great place to go.